Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to a new video. My name is Evelin Barta. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, for supporting my work, my channel, and then also thank you for your patience. It's been a while that I didn't post anything on this channel. I posted last week on my Esoterica with Evelyn channel. I was focusing more on readings. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about what we are going through as a collective and then also on an individual level in this period. Because what we are going through and what the consciousness is going through in this period is a great shift, is a great possibility for tapping into a higher level of existence, a higher level of awareness. And this is what is happening with me as well, and it's been tough on me. The past few weeks have been very tough, very challenging energetically. And my nervous system was very challenged by these energies. And I have to say that because we are going through this great shift in consciousness, and towards the end of the year, there's always a big gateway and a portal and a great possibility and opportunity to shift to a higher level of existence. Because we have the eclipse season, that is bringing many times very challenging situations as well. Situations and people as well that are forcing us in a way to tap into this void, into a state of surrender. So it's a little bit like we are being forced into a corner and we don't have any other choice but to surrender to the process. And the old ways of trying to fix things and being in resistance when it comes to these energies is no longer working, because what the ego does is automatically is trying to resist the process, is automatically trying to get better, to feel better. The dark night of the soul is always about having to surrender. And the dark night of the soul can happen many times in our lifetime. And that is forcing us to surrender to the process. And as I said, to be in this void where we don't know what is ahead, we don't know what to expect, but just to let go of the resistance and let the ego die. Yeah, so the ego is experiencing an ego death, basically. So it's a death of the old belief systems, the old paradigm, and automatically is trying to fix the problem. So the real key is not to try to fix the problem, but to let this process to take its natural course. So that's why I wanted to talk about this in today's video, because many of us are experiencing this ego death right now. We have just left Scorpio season and we have just entered in Sagittarius season. And Scorpio is all about death and rebirth. It's all about learning how to let go, learning how to surrender to our shadows as well and to our darkness. So it's a great possibility for an integration, a very deep integration, but that is very tough on our nervous system. So what we are collectively experiencing and individually as well is ascension. We can say that this is a transcendence of the consciousness, is this state of surrendering that is taking us to the level of transcendence. And in our life cycle and lifetime, we are going through different stages, different waves of this ascension. So we are experiencing cycle dynamic. And cycle dynamics are actually in this third dimensional reality are being perceived as waves. So things are coming in waves. And in one of my readings, I think I was talking about collectively experiencing now this spiral dynamic, where many things that we thought that we dealt with in the past is coming back for review. Many things are being felt at this very moment that are being repeated. So many of us are experiencing right now this deja vu feeling, like I have been there already. This feels so familiar. This has happened to me already. And in my case, what I'm experiencing now, it feels like I have been through that particular thing 7 years ago. But in reality, only my subconscious and my ego is perceiving it as a repetition, because this is a much higher and much more elevated version of what happened there. And I am a more elevated and more expanded and evolved version of myself as well. So I do have the opportunity to respond to that in a different way. So it's very interesting that we are closing, many of us are closing certain cycles, and we are transcending certain cycles. We are transcending traumas that are related to old patterns, to old wounds. And in my case, I am closing a 7-year cycle at this very moment. So the human consciousness and the higher self is going through cycles, and this way is experiencing itself and it's learning about itself. And what humanity is going through right now is that phase of awakening and ascension, which is a very externally focused. So we are going through this initial phase of this spiritual awakening. We are at crossroads, and we have the opportunity to embody a more exalted form of the human consciousness, the human being, or a degenerated form of the human being, descension. So we have the opportunity to ascend or to descend at this point, because there's a fork in the road. And taking in consideration what happened in the past 2.5 years, humanity is going through a big awakening in that sense. And that phase of awakening, which, as I said, is very externally focused. So what do I mean by being focused externally? I mean by that the attention is being placed on the negative aspects of our reality. And there's a realization of these negative aspects of our reality. What is happening in our structures, what is happening in institutions. And at this stage of ascension and at this stage of awakening, we realize that we are living in a reality that is full of darkness. And the focus is on corruption, on the global elite, on sinister agendas, on corrupt corporations and institutions, on the injustice in the world, the agendas that are in place that are not serving humanity, but on the contrary, they are trying to get us on a path that is leading humanity to a totalitarian system and the losing of our sovereignty. So there's a realization of that. And that is why, as I said, the attention is being placed on the negative aspects of our reality. There's a closer contact with the true nature of our reality. And when that happens, there's anger that is being activated in the individual. So there's anger on a global level as well because of that. But that anger comes from the heart, because it does have the capacity to turn things around. That anger contains that warrior energy, that rebel energy. The individual, when starts to stand up against injustice in the world, against unfairness in the world. And it doesn't only come from slogans and kind of this following the crowd mentality because others are telling us to do so, or this is how we do it, that we stand up. No, it really comes from the heart. It really comes from that inner fire and that energy of, I do want to change things. I do want to change things because I see injustice. I see negative and positive. I see what is right and what is wrong. So at this stage of awakening and ascension, it's very typical to be inundated with a lot of information, and there's a great deal of polarization. So there's a great deal of the negative and positive. The challenge of this state is really to discern what is right and what is wrong for us as well. So as I said, it's very typical for this stage to be inundated with a lot of information, to learn about the ropes of deception, of darkness. However, at this stage, the individual is not yet at that level when it believes that it can transcend the darkness. The individual does see the darkness in the world. However, it cannot perceive the light at the end of the tunnel yet. And it is looking at higher levels of consciousness that are coming after this stage of awakening. The next stage of ascension, it perceives it as a complete nonsense. So it perceives metaphysical truth and metaphysical aspects of our reality as complete nonsense. The downside of this particular stage is that the individual can get stuck in this stage, can get stuck in the darkness. And it thinks that this is the highest level that it will ever reach. There's nothing that is above that. And that is why we are hearing many people that are very immersed in conspiracies, in conspiracy theories, which are conspiracy truth, and are very immersed in that information about the dark side of our reality and our society. We many times hear them saying that, yes, the global elite is winning and we are losing, and the great reset will happen and there's no other way around and nothing will change. So at this stage of awakening, the individual doesn't have yet the inner strength and doesn't have the frequency spectrum to see itself as someone capable of transmuting these energies. So it doesn't see itself as someone that can elevate the level of consciousness of the planet, and it cannot perceive the frequency of switching realities and being able to switch realities. So even though there's an immense healing that is happening at this stage, and it can happen, the individual cannot integrate yet and heal what is being held in their cellular body. So it is very important to start to embody this aspect of seeing our reality for what it is. That is when the first stage of integrating the shadows is, when you see shadow. However, as I said, it's very easy to get stuck in this particular frequency. And because this band of frequency has lots of blind spots, it can become the ego's realm permanently. So this is where we are getting to that stage of choosing our realities and arriving to crossroads, when we can choose an exalted path where we are transmuting our karma and we are getting to the next level of awakening and ascension, which is about integration, or we are remaining at this very blind spotted stage of seeing the darkness but being unable to transmute the darkness. And sometimes the individual gets more and more degenerated because of that, or it remains on the same level for a very long period of time, or maybe many lifetimes as well. And then also at this level of consciousness, it's very easy for the individual to perceive everything that is above this level of consciousness as one, nonsense, or distortion that is trying to entrap them further into the matrix, a threat. And they can get to that belief that they are at peak consciousness at this stage and they cannot develop further. That all the spiritual teachers that are above this particular level of consciousness are trying to entrap people into the matrix even further. And that is why I noticed that there are certain YouTubers as well that I came across in the past few months that are criticizing real spiritual teachers that are having an exalted level of consciousness, and they are perceiving them as frauds, as tricksters, when in reality what is happening is that they are projecting their own fear onto them, the fear of being entrapped into the matrix. So at this stage of awakening, when you get immersed in the darkness, you are also at the frequency of fear and division, because the ego is perceiving everything as a threat. The world is unsafe. People are wanting to trick me. Institutions are wanting to trick me. There's no hope for a better tomorrow. There's no hope for the elevation of the consciousness. And everyone that is talking about elevation of the consciousness and spirit world and metaphysical truth and then even quantum physics is a fraud. They are controlled opposition. So at this stage, it is very typical to perceive really elevated spiritual teachers as threats. And there's no discernment between a real trickster and lower astral beings and an exalted being. So the blind spots are also containing the lack of awareness that they can reach higher levels and higher octaves of consciousness. And the other thing that is also a blind spot is projecting unresolved wounds onto other people. They are projecting their unresolved traumas, their subconscious triggers and own shadows onto other people. And they are using their warrior energy for righteousness and for belittling other people that are having a different opinion. They are using that as a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism is serving as a distraction for not looking at our core wounding and not looking at our own shadows. So there's a great polarization at this stage, and that is why there's a big projection as well. So one of the biggest challenges at this particular stage is to learn to discern, is learning discernment. What is to project our own personal wounds onto others, and what is to transmute those wounds into something else, into a higher state of being, a higher state of reality via our anger. So by using our anger. So in a sense, making peace with our anger, befriending our anger in a sense, when our anger becomes an ally. And at that stage, we are reaching a higher level of existence and we are getting to the next stage of awakening. So at this particular stage, we are also learning how to navigate karma. There's no awareness of the triggers when at the next wave of ascension, because we are talking about spiraling up. So the next stage of ascension is about being aware of our triggers and when we are being triggered. So being the observer. So at this level of consciousness, the consciousness is being observed, and it is being observed by awareness. That is called awareness. So we know things at this next stage at the level of the mind already, and we are using the mind as a conduit for transmuting and translating information in a sense. So we are embodying the higher self at this stage. And the embodiment of the higher self is the ability to expand our consciousness in order to be able to hold more of our higher self essence within our own consciousness, which will anchor a higher dimensional or multidimensional truth, a multidimensional consciousness into our physical body. Okay, so it is happening through the embodiment of our true essence. We will start to embody our true essence. And at this stage, the individual is aware of the victim-perpetrator cycle. So what is happening is that it is starting to step out of the victim mentality, of victimization. There's an objective victimization here, and the individual is no longer in denial about this stage. So this stage is not about denying that they are victims and they are perpetrators, and it's not about having this blind spot about the true nature of our reality, because the individual has gone through already that particular stage when it has faced the shadows. And that first stage that I was talking about, facing the shadows and seeing the real nature of reality, is very important. So if that stage is not happening, then there is a spiritual bypassing of our reality. So if that stage is not happening, then the real integration hasn't happened yet. So in order not to be in denial about the victim and to be able to step out of that victim mentality, these both stages need to happen. These both waves need to be embodied in a sense. And what is happening at this more exalted stage is that we are starting to embody different versions of ourselves from different realities and different dimensions. So there's an alchemical process when we start to integrate different versions of us in different realities, and as I said, different spheres or different dimensions. And we start to embody the shadow sides of ourselves as well, and shadow versions of ourselves. And there's an awareness about source energy and us being a fractal of the source energy. And there's an awareness and an understanding about source not being only light, but being darkness as well. And when we look at source as the perfection, the perfect dance between light and darkness, then we will start to see ourselves as well, and the perfect embodiment of the light and the darkness as well. And there's no more fear around the dark side of us. So at this stage, we are stepping into different realities, as I said, and different parallel densities and then dimensions as well. And the concept of time disappears as well. And we realize that everything is happening simultaneously, and all of our lives in different dimensions are happening simultaneously. So there's a great deal of facing our shadows in certain densities and dimensions. And we realize that we cannot just embrace the angelic side and the positive and the light side of our incarnation cycle, because there are many lifetimes that we have been through and we are going through simultaneously that are dark, where we are expressing our shadow self. So there's an integration of all these lifetimes that are happening simultaneously. And that is why there's a healing that is happening of different energies that the higher self is extended into through these different incarnations. So there's a grasping of the nature of source. There's a merging of our divinity with humanity as well, with our humanness. And this is what becoming a multidimensional being is. So at this ascending trajectory, we are starting to integrate more and more of a truth at a deeper level. Each time that particular truth is being reintroduced into our reality. So each time that we come across the same thing in this spiral movement, we are able to integrate more and more of that particular truth. And we are able to tap into more and more awareness, to bring more and more awareness to that truth. So each time we are able to reach a deeper and deeper level when we are at this level of consciousness. This level of consciousness is about an initiation into the esoteric realm, into occult realms as well. And there's a merging of spirit and human. And there's awareness of our spirit selves. There's an awareness about us being human as well, the material and the spiritual realm as well. Being material and then being spirit as well at the same time. So being aware of our multidimensionality. And this initiation happens through a group consciousness. It doesn't come only from our higher self, but there's a realization that is coming from a group consciousness, from oneness, from the unity consciousness, a consciousness of different dimensions that are figuring out their place in existence. And that is what the information is about. This is where the information is coming from. So yes, this is what is happening for many of us now. However, it is very necessary for that initial stage to take place. And what is very interesting in my case, and in the case of many of us that were exposed at New Age thinking and New Age teachings as well, is that the second stage, so this more elevated stage, started to happen. But it happened in a way that the first stage, the initial stage of seeing the darkness and the true nature of the reality, has not been integrated. So, for example, with me, what happened is that I started to embody some spiritual truth. And there was a certain amount of initiation that happened. But because the second stage of the true nature of our reality and what is happening behind the scenes with big corporations and the darkness, the real nature of the matrix wasn't acknowledged by me. So because I didn't acknowledge the darkness and I used New Age teachings and spirituality to lower my pain, to lower my suffering, and for escapism, then there was a great deal of distortion in my mind about who I am. So yeah, for me it happened in a little bit like inverted way, and I know that it was the case with many of us who started this spiritual journey. And also what I was trying to say is that at that initial stage, when you acknowledge the darkness in the world, the idea is to focus on the human experience and not to focus on spiritual and metaphysical truth and metaphysical concepts. That will happen naturally. And you cannot force the spiritual evolution of an individual by introducing them to these relatively abstract concepts that are being understood from that frequency band of the more exalted stage. You cannot force that. You cannot introduce them to these concepts, metaphysical and spiritual concepts. They will perceive them as nonsense. They will make sense for them over time. And that's why I always try to say, but it is easier said than done, obviously for me as well, not to force what we know onto other people, hoping that they will evolve quicker just because we told them about these concepts and about these realities. There has to be an open-mindedness about this information, for this information, like an openness from their side. And even when there's an openness, which is a great start already, and a great evolutionary phase, that still does not mean that there's readiness as well. So we have to be patient with these people. And again, like being patient with ourselves first, and then being patient with those that are not on that particular level of development yet. All right, so this is what I wanted to say in today's video, and I hope it made sense and it helped. And this is a little bit like a summary of what I have been through in the past few weeks, a summary of my inner dynamics as well, and a little bit of a dark night of the soul for me, which I'm still learning to surrender to, because it is serving as a level of initiation, as an initiation process that I'm going through. So guys, this is again today's video. Thank you so much for everyone's support. If you want to support my channel and my work, you can do it on Patreon, where I'm sharing different readings. You can subscribe to my other channel, which is called Esoterica with Evelin, where I'm posting quite often as well, where I'm sharing collective readings as well, and readings by signs. And then also, if you want to book a personal reading, you can do it down below in the description box. Or you can just email me and then I will reply to your email. So we can communicate via email as well. And then you will find my email down below in the description box. So take care, everybody. Have an amazing week. Thank you for being here. And I cannot wait to see you next time.